Welcome back, and we continue today with another lecture on making decisions. And today we're going to look at a very practical application from the world of utilities. Utilities being your gas bill or your hydro bill or your telephone bill, okay? And there's numerous if statements used in those kinds of calculations. In our main example today, we're going to take a look at how a gas company could work out your actual bill. And it involves what's called tiered pricing. Let's take a look at the actual question. If you remember the sheet that I gave you last lecture, we actually went through and took up question number 2. Let's focus in on number 4. And actually an important part of my lecture series is actually to teach you a bit about problem solving too. So sometimes they're going to give you questions and not just the programming is going to be important, it's understanding how you develop the program. All right, let's take a look at question number 4, which is a question to deal with working out your gas bill. And this gas company, it measures its gas in hundreds of cubic feet, which they call CCF, and it charges them according to the following schedule. The first 8 cubic feet is 50 cents each. So if you use 4, it's going to be times 50 cents each, okay, which would come out to $2. Now, more than 8, it's an additional 30 cents each. So to understand that, let's pretend I used 10 cubic feet of gas. Okay, so if I use 10 cubic feet of gas, the first 8 are charged at 50 cents each, which would be $4, and the additional 2 to make up the total of 10 would be charged at 30 cents each, which would be an additional 60 cents, for a grand total of $4.60. Okay, so that's the math behind it. So if you don't understand that, you can't actually program the question. So what you always try to do when you're given a problem like this in real life is start doodling on a piece of paper, figuring out, all the different numerical possibilities before you generalize it into a computer program. Now, once you have that in your mind of how it works and the mathematics behind it, you are ready to program. Okay, I'm going to use my favorite trick again. I'm going to use a program I've already worked on, use some of the information already in there to help me do the next question. So remember that ticket price one we did last lecture, and then we did the average program as we took up some of the assigned work. Well, we're going to use that, and I'm just going to add another button. And inside here, I'm going to call this button, we'll call it gas. So slide this up here. And we'll add the word BTN, and we'll call this gas. Okay, so we're ready to program it. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask the user for the amount of gas they used. So let's assume that's in integer. We are then going to work out the bill. And we'll initialize that to 0 because I know one of the previous questions we did with if statements, we needed to do that. Now we're going to ask the user for the amount of gas they used, and we can beg, borrow, and steal from one of these. It doesn't matter which one. I'll take this one right here. Okay, and I'll put it right there. And of course, this isn't tickets anymore. We'll call it the gas bill. Please enter your gas usage in CCF, okay, cubic feet. And obviously that's not the word age. We're going to change it to gas. Okay, and I'll slide this over a bit so you can see it a little bit better. So now we're ready to do some if statements. What we're going to do with our if statements is we're going to basically say, listen, if the amount of gas is less than or equal to 8, we're going to charge you the amount that you used times 50 cents. Else if your amount of gas that you used is greater than 8, we're going to charge you, now here's where it gets tricky, because it's not just 30 cents. Okay, if you go back to the question, more than 8. So it's like it includes the first part and the second part. So it's almost like got to invent an equation or a formula. So the amount of gas is going to be, well, since you're over 8, you use the entire 8. Okay, so it's $4 there, no matter what, plus. Okay, and this part, now we have to figure out a way to say to the computer, listen, if it's 10 and the base was 8, the difference is 2, and that's the extra cost I want to charge you. So the way you say that is you say gas minus 8, and then you times that by 30 cents. Okay, let me give you a for instance. Let's assume we did use 10 cubic feet of gas. That's what would go into this variable, right? So obviously 10 is bigger than 8, so we don't even do this formula. We go to this formula and we take the full 8 amount of the 10 and times it by 50 cents. And then we take this 10 number and put it right there. And 10 minus 8 is obviously 2. And then we times that by 30 cents to get our 60-cent total. Okay, so this formula works. And this is the kind of thinking you have to do when you're a computer programmer. If you're only looking to do 1 or 2 specific questions, then it's useless to write a computer program. But when you want to make it work for any possibility, you have to generalize your solution so that it works for all the different possibilities. The last step in this solution is then to print out the actual bill. So your gas bill is, and then we will attach the actual amount, and it's money, right? So we're going to type in to string with currency on it and semicolon. Okay, let's give it a, well, let's do a save. I always like to save. Okay, and then we'll do a run. And we'll do 2 scenarios to make sure they work. So the first scenario is going to be we use 5, which is under 8, right? So this would be 5 times 50 cents. Let's see what happens. 250. Very nice. Okay, let's do that 10 example. Okay, so I think the answer we worked out from before was 260 or something like that. I can't remember, but let's just see what happens. 460. I'm sorry, yeah, it was 460. Okay, so that's correct. So that's the logic when you do this thing called tiered pricing. Now they get a lot more complicated than this. Some utilities, like the one I'm going to let you try in a few seconds, has what we call multiple tiers, 2, 3, 4 levels of pricing depending on your gas usage or your hydro usage or whatever else. That's the kind of logic that's going to be involved. And what we're going to do is I'm going to get you to take a look at this question. It's number 6 for a hydro. Okay, and I'm going to stop the recording for a few minutes, give you whatever time you need. When you think you've got it or you've given up, restart or start the recording at this spot, and we will take a look at the solution. And again, don't create a new program fresh. Stay in this, okay? Add another button, call it hydro question or something, and then use this as your guide to see if you can do it. Okay, good luck. All right, let's first figure out the actual math behind how this hydro bill is calculated, because if you don't understand that, you won't be able to program it. So let me start doodling a little bit here and go through each of the 3 levels of pricing. This one here, you have to understand, is a flat fee. So the first 12 kilowatt hours or less, it's $2.80. So what that means is if I use 7 kilowatts, it's $2.80. If I use 12, it's $2.80. So for the first part, it's always $2.80. Now, above that, and the way they word it here is the next 78. So really, if you're at 12 plus 78, so all the way up to 90 kilowatts, then what you're going to do is be charged 8 cents for that amount over 12. Oh, and then it gets even crazier. So you're at 90, but now what about if you're over 90? You're at 91. Well, then you're charged the first level, the 280, plus the entire second level at 8 cents, plus the amount over 90. So if you're 91, you get charged 1 times 6 cents. So you see how people get crazy with their hydro bills. There's, in this one, 3 levels. And again, I've made up the prices, obviously, but this gives you an idea of what we call tiered pricing. So let's start to computer program this now. So we'll drop this screen down a little bit just to get us rolling. And like I said, I've used this program again. We're going to beat this one to death because it's got all kinds of neat stuff. And a lot of it's already set up for us. Now in this particular case, we're going to ask for the kilowatt hours. And we're going to work out the bill again. And we'll initialize it to 0. And again, we will steal this line from above. Okay, to make it easier for us. Put it right about there. And of course, we're asking for your hydro usage. Okay, and then I will call this hydro bill. And again, this is not exactly how they do it, obviously, but we're trying to show you the math involved. And we're about the word gas, and we're going to call it kWh. And now we get to the mathematical part. Okay, so first if statement's going to be like if you use less than or equal to 12. And again, let's double check that to make sure we're doing it right. So first 12 or less. So that does include 12. It's going to be a flat charge. So we add the squiggly lines. Don't ever forget the squiggly lines. And then we say the bill is equal to 280, which I know sounds kind of weird. That's called a flat charge. All right. No matter what you use up to 12. And now else if your kWh is greater than 12 and your kWh is less than or equal to 90. Okay, so that's what we think of as the next 78. So if you're at 12, the next 78 brings you all the way to 90. Okay, and again, we got to work out a bill, but this is a bit more complicated formula because at each level, it takes into consideration the previous value. So it's 280, that's from before, plus, now I don't know how much. All I know is kWh minus the base of 12, okay? And let me times that by, and we'll check what we have to times it by, 8 cents. Okay, so this one's times by 0.08. Now let me give you a for instance before I continue. What if I had used 14 kilowatts of gas? So the first 12 would have been at 280, okay, a flat charge. Now I used 14, right? So I'm 2 over 12. So if I put 14 there where that kWh is, take away 12, I get 2. Yes, this formula is going to work, and it's going to work for any possible combination within those constraints. All right, now we're down to the last one. The last one's going to be the craziest one because it's going to take into consideration everything. So if you're over 90, here's what's got to happen. The bill is going to be equal to the original 280 plus all of the second level. Now, all of the second level, how much is in the second level? Well, there's actually 78 kilowatts in the second level because from 12 to 90 is 78. So we're going to type in 78 times the entire 8 cents plus the difference above the 90, which is going to be written like that, times 0.06. And now we're ready to print out the answer. So we're just going to put a little message box down here and we're going to display the results. Your hydro bill is, and we'll attach the bill. And of course, now we're getting good at this. We're going to put it in currency, put a little semicolon there. Okay. And then we'll save it and hopefully it'll work out. Let's just give it a try. Make sure we don't have any errors. Okay, so let's pick the easiest one first. So if you use 1 kilowatt, still going to be 280. If you use 10 kilowatts, still going to be 280. And if you use all the way to 12 kilowatts, it's still going to be 280. Now it gets a bit trickier. Let's say I use 13 kilowatts, okay, just 1 over. It's going to be 280 plus the 8 cents times 1, which is 288. Makes sense. Okay, so we're doing it well. And the last case would be like if you used 91, which would take all the different combinations into case, and it works out to $9.10. So there you have a more complicated example of tiered pricing and how the computer programs use if statements to handle those types of answers. Okay, so now you've got a decent idea of a practical application from the business world, the utility world of decision making and if statements and how it's used. Okay, so kind of neat, and this is the whole focus of this course. Every time we learn a concept, I just want to teach you the concept for the basic idea of the concept. I want to see where it's applied in real life and how it applies. Now, it gets more technical and more advanced than this, but we're just starting off, and this is not a bad way to start off. Now, in this first section of the course, all we're doing is really reviewing and giving you a refresher. But after each lecture, I like to throw in a couple extra little tidbits, some neat ideas, and let me do that with this particular lecture also. I've got a couple of neat examples I want to show you. The first one's called invoice total. I'll give it a quick run first, and then we'll discuss what's different about it, what's an extra little feature that I've highlighted. So this basically works out an invoice, what you're going to pay. And there's different types of customers. So I'm going to type in an R customer, and I'm going to say I bought something for $200. And what it does is basically figure out the type of customer and then the percentage that they get as a discount. If they're a C-type customer, they get 20%, and anything else, let's call it an A-type customer, they get 40%. All right, so what's going on behind the scenes? Well, kind of neat, couple of neat ideas that I want to show you. First and most important thing is there's this new type of variable called a decimal. And basically, it's a more exact format for numbers, okay? So a decimal is kind of a fixed point variable type, and it takes up more memory, but it has no rounding errors, as opposed to the usual double that we would use for decimals, and that's called a floating point variable type. So there's something new, okay? And floating points, they can have a bigger range of numbers. They take up less memory, but they can lead to some rounding errors. I've got a whole lecture later on the pitfalls of computer arithmetic. The actual coding is not that much different, but notice here that I've got the letter M after a decimal. That's kind of cool. You can do that also with floats, doubles, by putting the letter F after it, and it just represents a decimal number. The actual coding itself is pretty straightforward. It's a series of if statements. If you've picked an R-type customer, we go through a number of if statements to figure out how much you're going to get as a discount. And if you're a C-type customer, you get this particular discount, and otherwise you get 40% off. All right. The other little thing I want to finish up to highlight in this example is, hey, what's going on there? That's a percentage format. That's different. Okay, there's currency, obviously. And this last thing, focus. And what I want to do to finish up is give it a run one more time just to highlight the focus. So you type in a customer type. You type in how much you want to spend or how much the cost was, and it works out the total. Now, look what happened. That focus moved the little cursor that was on the 300 back to here. So that's what that focus does. So there's our first little cool example to highlight a couple of neat extra features. The second example highlights my all-time favorite food, pizza, and we've done a question like this before. The only difference here now is that we've got some check boxes which we haven't handled before. I want to show you how to do those as a computer program. So basically, the program starts off and you've got your choices for the sizes of the pizza. You can pick your items. You can pick delivery and a coupon, and it works out the bill. Okay, now, what's going on behind the scenes? Well, a couple of things, and let's highlight the most important ones. When I double click here on the items, what I'm doing is I'm storing the item total in those numbers. Okay, the original prices are up here, and these are storing the item totals. Now, when I do the final calculation, which happens right here, what I do is I say, hey, which radio button was on? Was it the small? Then this is the formula I'm going to use. I'm going to take the small price plus the number of items times the surcharge, and all of these are in your form load up here. Okay, and we go through the whole process all the way down. All right, now you notice that radio buttons are always if, else if, because you can only pick one. With the checkboxes, what happens here is that you've got the checkbox, the first one could be picked and the second one could be picked. So they can all be on. So they're separate if statements. So here, when we check if they're on, we've got separate if statements, and that's the basic difference. So again, little tidbits very quickly to finish up this unit on if statements. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.